we skip to the good part.
You've arrived at your destination.
Okay, so this has definitely been the hardest pregnancy that I have had so far. I mean, in and out of the hospital at 27, 28 weeks due to regular contractions and trying to get those to slow down, and then regular NST tests, steroid shots, all of that. I also found out that he has an enlarged kidney, so his left one is measuring in at 12 centimeters and regular kidneys measure at 8 centimeters. So that caused me to be like a high-risk pregnancy. So I was having a lot of like preterm labor type symptoms. At 33 weeks, I was actually told that I am in preterm labor and I should be on bed rest. But because I got the 2 other toddlers, I couldn't completely be on bed rest, but I did try my best. So my due date is October, and I delivered him September 19th at 9:25 a.m. He measured in at 6 pounds, 7 ounces, 19 inches long. He did lose some weight though after birth, and so now he's just slowly making his way back up to 6 pounds, but at birth he was 6 pounds 7 ounces. So on September 18th, I decided to call the on-call nurse because I was having some bathroom issues. I was super nauseous, couldn't keep anything down, food and drink wise, just not feeling myself. And I also had some leakage, but I thought it was like just discharge type stuff, so I didn't really think much of that symptom. But I did bring it up to the nurse, and she suggested that because of all these symptoms and because of the preterm labor, I should be going back into the labor and delivery unit just to get checked out and play it safe. So on September 18th, around 9 o'clock at night is when I arrived at the labor and delivery unit. And the nurse there, she went ahead and checked my cervix to see if I dilated or what was going on down there. And she looked at me and said that I am not going anywhere and that I am staying to have the baby. She went on to tell me that I am 6 centimeters dilated and 70% ephased, and she is very shocked that my water did not break at home, just because of the fact that, you know, I was leaking, and that's what that leakage was. It wasn't discharge, it was my water slowly breaking. The other thing that amazes me is on September 18th, my grandma actually is the one that drove me to the hospital because I was contracting so bad. And on the way to the hospital, we got a flat tire. And so when she called AAA, they were like, well, do you want us to call an ambulance to get her to the hospital? And I kept telling her, no, I'm fine. I don't think it's that big of a deal. I didn't know I was in labor during that. So I'm surprised that my water didn't break on the side of the highway. Okay, so September 18th that night, they didn't really do much. They just wanted to see if I would dilate on my own. I ended up not really dilating more past like a 6.5. So I did manage to fall asleep that night, kind of. And so September 19th around 7:30 a.m. is when I start having really bad contractions. And so the nurse called my OB, and my OB came in and fully broke my water because it still hadn't broke on its own. It was just slowly, like very slowly leaking. So after my OB went ahead and broke my water, it was a bit of a waiting game. I would get up and like walk around, and I would go on the birthing ball. I'd kind of rock back and forth on the bed trying to get the contractions to just not like ease up, but just so I can tolerate them better. But yeah, so then around 9 o'clock a.m. I called the nurse back in and I said I need a push. And she checked me to see if I was at 10 centimeters, and she said that I'm not at a 10 centimeter. She didn't tell me what I was at, but she told me it is not time to push yet. Do not do anything, just try and sit there and relax. So I went ahead and I waited on pushing until about 9:15 a.m. and I called the nurse back in and I said, I am not waiting any longer. I need to push. He needs to come out. I'm in too much pain. And you could see on the monitor my contractions were just back to back, up and down, like they were bad. So again, the nurse told me that it is not time to push and to not do anything. So I stood up again and just trying to get my pain to kind of be manageable. And when I stood up, there were huge blood clots that were just dropping on the ground. And so that's when my nurse decided to quickly call my OB because they thought that I was going to need an emergency cesarean. And so my OB came rushing down around 9:20ish, and she checked and made sure that my placenta, because that was the other thing, is placentans, I guess, have like one lobe and mine had two. So she was afraid that mine like bursted and I was going to need emergency C-section. So she checked all that out and said that everything's fine and we don't need to go through with that surgery. So while my OB and a couple other nurses were still in the room, my OB told the nurse to check my cervix again to see if it was time to start pushing and if I dilated more. So she went ahead and checked me, and she said that my cervix actually went back down to a 5 or a 6. And so she didn't want me to start pushing, but the baby's head kept sliding down and was about to come out. So that's why I was in so much pain, is because cervix wasn't dilating, but baby was coming. So as I'm sitting there in pain, the OB and the nurse are kind of talking about how like that's a rare occasion and they barely see that happen. And so they felt really bad that I was in so much pain, but that's why I wanted to push, is because his head was just right there about to come out. So my OB ended up waiting about another minute or two, and then she ended up checking me one more time, and she said we just need to get him out. So they went ahead and they set up the bed and they had me push, and within I think like a minute and a half, if that, he was out and crying and everything. And the nurses and doctor looked at each other and said, he is definitely a boy. Okay, so the reason we came up with the name that we did is because we wanted a southern name, considering he was born in the South. And so my grandpa came up with the name Bo, and we just fell in love with it. And then I decided to do Robert as part of the first middle name, because that is my grandpa's name, and my grandpa's my best friend, and since he's getting up there in numbers and this is my last kid, I wanted to do something meaningful and special. And because this is also my last kid, I wanted to do Joseph as the second half of the middle name, so it kind of incorporates my name, because my middle name is Joe, so Joseph. Anyway. But then we decided on Jordison because that's the other kid's last name. So that is how we decided on the name.